Well, thank you guys so much for being here. We're so excited to welcome you to our next podcast about the history of downtown Arlington. And I have three guests today. We're going to talk about the history of live music and the arts in downtown Arlington. So I'll let the guests kick this off with a self-introduction. Persis, you want to get started?
Hi, Maggie. I'm Persis Ann Forster, and I've grown up here in Arlington. It's been the only place I've ever really lived. And I have Miss Persis Studio of Dance, which was started by my mother. That's another story unto itself. And she still comes every once in a while. And then I also have Dance Theater of Arlington, which my mother created in 1980. Glad to be here.
Letatia?
Yeah, hi, I'm Letatia Teykl. I am the executive director at the Levitt Pavilion Arlington. I am the new executive director. There's only been one previous, and that's Patty Dew, who has an outstanding career with the Levitt. And I started in November. So, wow, it's been a big ride. I grew up in Arlington from the time I was 6 months old and live in the Arlington-Mansfield area and just love being here. Excited.
I'm excited to talk about everything you've learned and everything you know and share with the community. And then Paul, we included you today. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Paul Fulks. I've been in Arlington now for a little over 30 years and been very involved as much as I could be with everything from music to the arts, honestly. I served as president of Dance Theater Arlington for 4 or 5 years with Persis Ann, and been on the Levitt board since it opened. So thank you for inviting me. I'm anxious to talk about this.
Absolutely. And I'm Maggie Campbell. I'm the host for this podcast series. And I guess I should share a little bit because I'll be sharing some history too. I came back to Arlington last year to lead the Downtown Arlington organization. And I was actually the first executive director 10 years ago. So it's kind of full circle for me. And I've enjoyed watching the arts grow up. When I was here 10 years ago, we were not a designated cultural district. The Levitt Pavilion didn't exist when I got here. And we now have designation from the state of Texas as a cultural district and a lot of solidarity in our arts community. So I guess I'm going to start with Persis Ann. I'd really like to kind of start with what was it that the university did in the early years to kind of set the tone, because they have always been a leader in the arts.
Yes, and the people who were there, my mother attended when it was NTAC, and Dan Burkholder was the band director there and had a band, a jazz band that would travel around the area doing different things. So they had a lot of musicians that were very, very prominent in that time. And then when Charles Proctor came to UTA, he had been a Broadway actor, and it was just a very exciting time. And Mr. Slaughter, who was head of the drama department at that time. Now this was before I ever got here to Arlington, but he produced a lot of great actors, and was just really an amazing thing. So when they built Texas Hall, we were one of the first ones to have our dance recital there, which was, I believe, in '66. That has been a constant stream of talent, that has come from there. Morgan Woodward was a movie star who also came, through there. So there were a lot of different people in town that went on to bigger and better things.
And tell us a little bit, please, about your mom and the influence that she's had on the arts in this community.
When she was in school there, I know that she was absent one day, and somebody said, where is Persis? And the teacher said, well, she's probably running the generator, like on a treadmill kind of thing. But she went to school 2 years there because it was a 2-year college at that time. Then she went on to UT Austin and graduated there. So, she got the studio sort of by default, because the woman she was teaching for, who was married to Morgan Woodward, ended up going back to West Texas. And so she had a studio, and she was on the Chamber of Commerce. She did every Miss Flame pageant for the fire department. She did all kinds of things, lots of fashion shows, and any kind of community project or community gathering, she usually was doing a show there. And then she went on to perform at Casa Manana and some other places in Ohio. And so she started a group with Charles Proctor and the Chamber of Commerce called the Downtown Theater. Downtown Theater was from 1980 to 1991. We produced 11 musicals, one each summer, with a big live orchestra, which were all the music teachers in Arlington. We had that going for 11 years in conjunction with the university. And it was, it's something I miss terribly. I wanted to start again.
Well, and I know that it was in the 1950s during Mayor Tom Vandergrift's leadership that the Martin family, who owned the upstairs gallery,
Right.
got together with the Joyner family and started an Arlington Arts Advocacy Group that eventually turned into our Museum of Art. But there was all of this stuff happening kind of in the 50s and 60s, kind of
Right.
coalescing around this arts energy in our downtown.
Right. And then, do you want me to talk about Theater Arlington yet?
Yeah, now's a good time.
Okay. Well, Bill Cole, who taught at Nichols Junior High, taught music there, also spent 17 years performing at the Dallas Summer Musicals. They did a production of I Do, I Do. I Do, I Do was written by Tom Jones and Harvey Schmidt, who my mother choreographed for at the University of Texas at Austin. So they did this production here, and the monies from that production went to start Theater Arlington. And so Theater Arlington spent I don't know how many shows they had to do out at Bob Duncan Center. And then they talked to Tony Arangio about them getting a building on the corner of Division and Davis Street here in Arlington. And so we spent a lot of fun years there, and of course then moved downtown. But it was a big deal, that was a really big deal. And so she was part of starting that too.
And it sounds like there's always been a lot of old Arlington families, longstanding families, like the Martins. Martin High School was named after J.D. Martin, and he was the superintendent. James was his son of AISD, and the Joyners I mentioned. There's these families that have carried the arts, whether it was for the theater or the museum. And then, we can talk about the Levitt in a few minutes. I want to ask now, though, about country music, because we have sort of the traditional arts picking up and gaining steam during the 1950s and 60s and coalescing around what's turned into these amazing institutions that we all love. But it was really in the late 70s and 80s that a young man was coming on the scene who was a singer, songwriter, musician, businessman, and we were lucky enough that he finally brought his show here. And that man was Johnny High, right? Paul, can you tell us a little bit about the influence that Johnny High has had on why live music is such a big part of our experience here in downtown?
Yes, ma'am. Johnny High, when he opened Johnny High Review at the old movie theater every week, many shows. I don't remember exactly how many people guest artists he had on each show, but he actually had a tremendous house band there that performed behind all the artists who came. He gave quite a few people their starts, from Leanne Rimes to Leanne Womack, numerous others, but those are a few names that started there with Johnny High. And it proceeded for quite a few years there. And a lot of the acts that came to Johnny High are still actually performing in Branson, Missouri to this day.
And in Nashville and on stages around the world. Johnny was a legendary Texas talent booster. And I was really, really lucky to get to know him when I was here 10 years ago. He passed away in 2010, and the Arlington Music Hall was filled to the rafters with people honoring him. his production. You talked about the house band that he had, but he really liked to showcase both local talent and emerging talent, especially from Texas. And he had 20 to 25 performers in the show every weekend. He was there every Friday and Saturday night. I used to go on Friday afternoons during rehearsal and have a root beer with him and get to watch. And, you know, some of the names you mentioned, Kelly Clarkson's played there, Willie Nelson's played there, Boxcar Willie, the Dixie Chicks, Maren Morris, you know, and some of those people have gone on and graced the stages at our Levitt Pavilion as well. So and I don't think we can underestimate the influence that Johnny's had, especially for young people.
Right.
I mean, there were a lot of people that walked on that stage auditioning, you know, maybe having learned some of their trade at Theater Arlington or, you know, in our high school systems here. And Johnny went on to make them big acts. And, you know, we're really lucky to have that. And then Johnny kind of got a vision to turn that into something much bigger than the Johnny High Country Review in his late years. And we'll come back and talk about that. But I want to hear about the Levitt Pavilion. And I can share a little bit about that as well, because before I moved here 10 years ago, I was working in a city in Pasadena, California, and I was able to learn what a Levitt Pavilion was and work with the Levitt Foundation. So it was a bit of a natural idea to bring here. But I'm gonna let Letatia kick this off and tell us about how all of that started and kind of some of that history.
Okay, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to share. I will say, after 5 months, it's been a fast learn, but I will tell you from what I understand, and Maggie, you were very instrumental in that, bringing that idea to Arlington and then finding the community leaders that would participate in that. And that was like Cliff McCoskey, Kristen Vandergriff. I think they were your first co-chairs of your steering committee to get this going. And just the way you guys were able to reach out to not only the city, but all the community leaders to help make it happen. And the Zimmers hosted very, you know, fundraisers, and you guys traveled out as a group to California, to the foundation to meet Liz Hirsch. So that's the daughter of Mimi and Mortimer, so of the Levitt Foundation. And y'all made a trip out there and you visited with her and got these one-on-ones and said, well, what would that look like in Arlington, Texas? And then after that, then went into Pasadena to see how it was operating there, and just how the community just gathered together. Not only did they, you know, decide that this was perfect and would be great for the downtown Arlington and creating that community, green space, open space, music, but you also had to raise a lot of money. So, you know, over $2 million, close to $2 million were raised to create the pavilion. And, you know, Paul, you were involved back then, and, you know, that was the first Levitt Pavilion that was created on its own. And you guys designed it and were a part of that first piece, as it was with the Levitt Foundation versus us taking over a spot that already exists. You know, Paul, you want to share about that experience and what that was like working with Randy Gideon and how that came about?
Yes, Gideon Toll was the architectural firm that we selected to do the design, and what a great design they came up with. You know, it still looks today like it did 11, 12 years ago when it was finished. And, you know, I think that's huge because it continues, the crowds continue to grow, the artist levels continue to elevate. And for the actual park area and the actual Levitt Pavilion to stand the test of time as it has already, and I'm not going to spoil the upcoming thing. I'll let you talk about that, Letatia, in a little bit. But to watch it continue to metamorphosize, so to speak, that it just continues to, it's never was a caterpillar, but it just becomes a more beautiful butterfly, so to speak.
Well, the Levitt Pavilion Arlington, we actually operate 365 days a year in partnership with the city of Arlington. And so we work closely with Parks and Rec. So just to see that a city had that vision is it's just incredible. There's been so many things that have happened at the Levitt. Weddings. There's been a wedding. There's been an engagement. There's been first steps by babies. There has been proposals. I mean, it's just amazing what's gone on. You guys know it gives me chills, as a matter of fact, just to think how one open green space with some music can bring so many people together. Ooh, it's great.
And for those that don't know, because we jumped right into this and we all assume everybody, you know, that might be watching or listening to this knows what the Levitt Pavilion is or has experienced the magic of sitting on the lawn. Can you give them the sort of elevator description of what this Levitt place is?
Yes, so there's actually 8 across the country, and we are an outdoor music venue, and it actually can seat around 30 seat, open lawn spacing. Yes, we can put out some chairs. You can bring your own chair, but 3,500. It is across from City Hall, and the Levitt Pavilion Arlington actually puts on 50 free concerts a year. So anyone can come out, sit on the lawn from all over the area, and just listen to the music that comes in. And these are artists local. These are artists in Texas. These are artists across the nation. And it's just a way to come together, to dance, to just enjoy just time spent low cost, because it doesn't cost anything. You can bring your picnic lunch. You can do, you can also purchase food there, but the intent is to create this open atmosphere where folks can meet with friends. They can just hang out with their family. We have families that come on a regular basis, and this is the way that they enjoy spending time with their families.
And I love repeating something that Liz Levitt Hirsch says. She's so wonderful to share the gifts of her family, this live music under the stars. But she talks about the magic that's created when people who wouldn't normally sit next to each other, and their kids play together, and they're getting exposed to the arts while they're playing. They don't even know it, but it becomes kind of infused in culture. And that's really what I wanted to kind of unpack a little bit more today, because whether it's the arts or whether it's live music, both of those things seem to be impermeated in our history and our culture. And I want to try to kind of understand, why is that? I mean, Letatia mentioned some of the talent that has played on the Levitt stage through the years, either early emerging talent that's gone on to be household names, or some of our local favorites that we all love.
Yeah, so before I mention this, I'll also tell you something about the Levitt Foundation. It's Mimi and Mortimer Levitt, and kind of the reason that the foundation was created was because as Mortimer was growing up in New York area, he and his dad, at the end of the day, his dad would work a street cart, and they would, head home, and they would pass by Coney Island, and there would be music playing, and they couldn't afford a ticket to the concert. And so they would sit outside and listen to the music. And I mean, it's really that he was so passionate about it way back then, to decide that he felt like if he could bring that across the country, where other people, anyone could go and listen to music that normally you would pay a ticket to see. And that's it. The shows that are on the stage are shows that you normally probably have to pay a ticket to see, and you don't have to when you come to the Levitt. So that's really exciting. I mean, we've had Ruthie Foster, we've had Sarah Hickman, we've had our Brave Combo comes every year, and we've had the B-52s to we have Coming Sticks is coming. We've had Ray Wiley Hubbard, just a variety of artists through the years, Radney Foster. And so that's really cool, where you can come and hear all kinds of music. So we want people to know that no matter what genre you follow, if you come and you're on the lawn, you're going to enjoy whatever music's there, because it's going to be that awesome.
Yeah, that's what's pretty special about that place. And, when you name some of the people that are from Arlington that have through the decades become household music names, whether it's BJ Thomas or, the Pentatonics, and little Maren Morris. We found a flyer in our office not long ago. Apparently, we paid Maren Morris to perform at the Fuzzy's patio just before her career took off. And you know, we go around downtown, and her dad has a hair salon here, and everybody remembers Maren Morris from when she was a little girl. But we claim her as our hometown star, and there's many people like that. What is it about Arlington that produces such amazing talent? And you know, we have Kirk Franklin, you know, one of the world's top Grammy artists, who calls Arlington home and records his music here in our downtown. What is it about that?
I don't know. I would have to say that it's the collaborative effort, the way everybody kind of comes together, and they want to help and they want to be a part of what's going on. So if it's music, if it's the theater, if it's dance, people want to come and they want to see it succeed. So I think that's a lot of it. It's just that collaborative effort to make Arlington better every single day.
Letatia, I couldn't agree with you more. I think the amount of collaboration and, you know, what it takes to get a public-private partnership done is really done very well here in Arlington. Trey Yelverton, who is our current city manager, he was the assistant city manager 10 years ago when I came here first to be the director for the downtown organization, the new downtown organization that was just being created. And I want to share a story about kind of where the Levitt idea even came from. Yes, I'd worked with the Levitt and was involved in one in California, but I'd been on the job maybe 3 weeks, and Mayor Cluck called me to his office, and we really hadn't had a good sit down face to face to talk about what we were going to get done. And he said, "Maggie, what's your big idea?" Sort of like in true Mayor Cluck fashion, cut right to the chase. He said, "What's your big idea?" We were sitting in his office and looking out the window, and he caught me so off guard. I just pointed out the window and I said, "Well, if you'll build a park there, I know someone that can give us money for a band shell, and we can do 50 free concerts." And he leaned across the table and he kind of pounded his fist. He goes, "I like that. Let's do it." And you know, that was history. We were in the room, you know, when it happened. But you know, the city's leadership, Mayor Cluck and Trey, wouldn't have happened. And when I went over and knocked on Cliff McCloskey's door, my neighbor across the street, and said, "Cliff, you know, I need you to lead this, to be the chair." He said, "I will absolutely not do this. Absolutely not do this unless you get Kristen Vandergriff to be my co-chair." And the two of them were a dynamic duo, and it was just the right leadership that was needed, and the rest is history. So this collaborative spirit really led to the creation of this amazing place. Letatia, can you talk about the significance of the Levitt, the awards that it's won, how it's been recognized in terms of being a great public space, but also what it means for the community?
So through the years, there's been several awards, and just recently, I think 2019, it was the Great Public Space. And that was a program in Texas, and we were awarded that award, which was outstanding. And that's just for the efforts in the downtown area and what we've done in the community. So that was the most recent one. And then just as far as collaboration through the past, back in 2012, I think it was, you know, we had a tornado relief program and a benefit event on the Levitt lawn. And that was in partnership with the Salvation Army. And so, Paul, you were there back at that time. Talk to us about that event that evening and what it meant to Arlington to the Levitt be that ground where everybody comes together and support.
It was really pretty awesome. You know, we had Nashville's star winner, Melissa Lawson, perform that night. And here's where it kind of ties to Persis Ann a little bit too, because we also had Betty Buckley there, and Betty has served as one of our honorary board members with Dance Theater Arlington in the past. You know, what a great opportunity. The community turned out in full force to support the tornado victims, and quite a bit of money was raised. You know, I think one of the things, and you mentioned about how it brings people together. I think one of the neatest things about the Levitt Pavilion, and I've seen this from day one, There's nothing like the feeling that you get when you see children up in front of the stage who don't know each other, but they feel like they play together, and you would think they'd known each other for years. And I love that the Levitt has kept Arlington with the feeling that we are still a small town, even though we continue to grow like we grow. I have to give credit to the Levitt Pavilion for keeping it feeling like it's a smaller community, and I love seeing that. And it was very apparent there that night with the tornado relief concert.
I think every one of our arts organizations brings its own contributions to the mix. And, the Levitt is highly visible. It's a public space. There's no admission charge. But we also have great institutions that, sort of live and die by tickets, right? We got the Music Hall, the original home of Johnny Highs, and we've got Theater Arlington, which Miss Persis shared a little bit of the history. And then there's the Museum of Art. Tell us about the building that houses the Museum of Art, Persis. What's its history?
Well, I love that place. I used to go there as a child, J.C. Penney's it was at the time, and that's where we bought our uniforms for PE that we had to wear every time. But luckily, after that, it moved on, and we got to change it over to the Arlington Museum of Art, where we have spent a lot of time performing, for various and sundry fundraisers they've had or openings. They've been very kind to include Dance Theater of Arlington in a lot of the events that they've had. So we even had an event there with Dance Theater of Arlington. It was a costume exhibit, and we had it during one of our events at UTA, which was called Dance Texas, and invited people from all over the state and areas around here. So it was great to work with them. They were very, very helpful, and it was quite a collaboration.
And I know the museum came out of that original arts advocacy group that was formed in the 50s and 60s. And they bought the building in 1989, and it sort of turned a group of people to a place. And when it first opened, like in the early 90s, it was the Museum of Texas Contemporary Art. That's a really small niche, and they hobbled along as, sort of Texas contemporary art up until 2012. And that's when I understand that they made a significant change that altered the trajectory of the museum. And it's been more in the last decade that you're really seeing them step up and hosting things like the Picasso exhibit and the Keith Haring exhibit, and really kind of taking our arts to another level. Does anybody want to comment on that? I know we just hosted the Keith Haring exhibit, and it blew people's minds. That was
I will say that Chris Hightower certainly has had a lot to do with that, and Nancy Tice, who had been the president for many, many years. In the earlier years, before his death, Mitch Wilson was a very big part of that. So those people, talk about collaboration. But we're all about collaboration down here in downtown, and people don't realize that. I think we are constantly collaborating with Theater Arlington and with the museum over here. They come over here when they need space for rehearsal, and we go over there when we need to do a show, and we go to the museum when we, to do something together to bring more people downtown, because that's the goal here, is to be in this cultural district. I think the thing that I'm hoping for is that we get more people from South Arlington to come over to the downtown district. I think it's lesser known there, what all we have to offer here. And so got my fingers crossed on that one.
Well, and it's going to take a lot of solidarity and collaboration for us to pull through together and get on the other side of what we're currently experiencing. Before all of this COVID stuff started, Letatia, can you share a little bit, because we're working on sort of quietly and deeply another way that we can celebrate the arts and everything that has happened in downtown Arlington. Can you want to comment on that?
Yeah, so, back in like 2012, 13, 14, there was a festival in downtown Arlington. And so it was a collaboration of everyone in the arts community. And over time, it was decided not to do that. And with Maggie's leadership, we are all back on track again. And, had we not had this bump in the road, we would, in June, be doing the Americana Tracks Fest in downtown Arlington. And it's a 4-day event. And so we were unable to do that this year, but we are the new word pivot. We're all pivoting, and we'll be doing that in 2021. But our artist lineup was just top notch. And that was partners with the Arlington Music Hall. They were coming on board. Texas Live was coming on board. It was a way to celebrate music across Arlington, and the fact that Arlington is definitely a place where you will not miss out on enjoying some great artists. And then Maggie, you can tell them about all the other things that we had lined up, and then what they can look forward to in 2021. It'll be exciting.
Well, we do have a core group of people that are passionate about promoting the arts. And, that group with people like the Petchy family and Paul Fulks, who's an avid supporter of the arts, and everywhere you turn around, Paul is helping somebody get something to happen in the arts, whether it's the Levitt or the museum or the recent Red Cross flag display, the medical cross. So we're really lucky that we have arts patrons and arts supporters. I'm curious, what's everybody doing during this coronavirus time to stay engaged with your constituency? Obviously, you're not bringing people into the dance studio. Obviously, the music hall's not booking concerts. But let's talk about what we know about what everybody's doing to engage virtually or to plan to reopen.
We're calling on the good old-fashioned telephone. We're actually calling and connecting and saying hi to our kids and their parents and kind of checking in. We are hoping that we might be able to get groups of people back together in June. And at that time, I would try to have a recital then, and sort of, fingers crossed. I'm trying to do this before the children grow out of the costumes that we ordered. And so that's what we're doing. But we are doing some Zoom classes, and we are doing some, my assistant Kelly Teykl is on the social media all the time, working and doing different posts and sending out things. And we're sending out actual class things for them to practice, and music and that kind of thing. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we're going to be able to.
Do you know what the theater is doing?
What I have seen is that they are hoping to open Damn Yankees on August the 7th, I believe. So that is, fingers crossed on that too. Hopefully
that'll be a great show
to do. And if I could just stick in one little thing about the collaboration that you were talking about, so many of the teachers in Arlington. So I was talking about Jane Ellis and Dean Corey and all of those high school teachers and people who have then taken, and my mother was actually a teacher also at UTA. Well, Steve Morris, who is now the director of Theater Arlington, was one of her students. So it's that sort of, there is a continuity there that I think is what helps with making some of our kids the best ever, so, and we have Teen Talent Follies, but we didn't get to have it this year. That's the Pentatonics were on the Teen Talent Follies years ago.
Wow, so, really?
Yeah. Yeah. So
okay, cool.
Anyway, okay. I'll be quiet now.
I don't believe you. Paul or Letatia, what other thoughts come to mind when you think about this legacy we have of music and art in our downtown?
Continuity. Oh my gosh. Persis Ann, that's a awesome word, continuity. We have a board of 30-member board, and we have board members like Paul. You've been on since the beginning, but then we have folks that have joined in the middle, and we have some new folks, and just the continuity of what that vision was back, in 2007, 2008, and that we're able to continue on with that vision. And then to talk about your question a minute ago about what are we doing now. So we have the continuity that stays there, but then we also have what are we going to do now? What does this look like for us? So we're doing the Levitt Living Room series. We're doing live streaming on Tuesdays at 7. And that is new. It's called retooling. It's that we still need to get our music out. We have artists that, we had planned to open up on May 15th with Gary P. Nunn, and Brad Russell was opening up for him. And that weekend changed. It shifted gears. And so we've had to move a lot of those guys to the fall. Right now, our opening date is set for June 19th. We'll see how that goes. We'll, of course, follow along with the city and what does our state, what do we think is appropriate? And then when we do, we'll be ready. We'll be doing best practices and all that that'll go along with it. But we can't stop bringing music to folks and bringing people together. So a funny quick story, on our live streaming last Tuesday night with Taylor Young, it was so cool because I received a text message that said, "Hey, I had so much fun tonight at your concert." And I was like, well, that's cool. And then this person shares with me how they ran into one of their friends in the chat section and they hadn't talked in a while. And there they were both live streaming and watching Taylor Young and interacting. And one was on the back porch, one was in the house, and they were coming together. And so I'm like, okay, it can happen. It's not the same as the lawn, but it's still coming together. And so I think that's, if we can keep that coming, and that we plan to do that through June as of right now. And we'll just see what happens. We're going to be ready. We have a board that is open to what are the possibilities. And with the foundation's support and ideas, we can see what we can do in this time.
And I think we as an organization be in a good position in the coming months and years to help our cultural district. The state of Texas has a grant program, and we are working with a consultant now, even as we speak, to do an assessment and be poised to help our cultural district organizations, whether it's Symphony Arlington or the Master Chorale or all the institutions that we've kind of covered today. We have all kinds of creative entrepreneurs in our community, some interesting galleries and some startup businesses. So it's not all nonprofits. And it's kind of that gumbo of all of those forces kind of living and working together and cross collaborating, that you see some of the most creative things coming out of our downtown district. I mean, we've got artists working with coffee shops and restaurants to create art kits that you can do at home, and the examples of that just go on and on. And I know everybody's had to figure out how to be an entrepreneur. I watched something on social media, a dance lesson from the Persis studio, and it was like hip hop dance, and I tried it. Like, I thought, how many other people might try this that would normally never come down and take a hip hop class?
That's right.
Well, and then if one thing I'd like to share too is, Paul, talk about Spirit Lives and how that came about, because that's on the Levitt lawn, and it gives me chills. So talk about that. I forgot that one.
Yes, ma'am. Maggie reached out on a Friday to me, and we talked about possibly lighting the dream sculpture letters in blue to honor our frontline hospital workers and first responders. And I think we even need to honor and mention our grocery store people have been huge, and a lot of us have tended to overlook them, but I'm pretty thankful for them, as I can attest to, with all the food I seem to have eaten while this is going on. But whenever Maggie came up with that idea, then we had our Zoom meeting on a Monday night with the Levitt board. And, someone at the Levitt board mentioned, hey, what could we do to show that we're here? And we haven't gone anywhere. And the following day, we had a Zoom meeting with the Veterans Business Council. And the Veterans Business Council said, hey, we have flags. What can we do with the flags? And it was just a natural match to discuss and put them on the Levitt lawn to show that we are still here. And, then the idea came up that we probably should name the display. And back at the mayor's prayer breakfast in February, Chief Will Johnson, our police chief, challenged me with the slogan, "Be the Hope." Well, when we put the flags up on the Levitt line, we kind of tossed back and forth. Should that be named The Spirit Lives or Be the Hope? And we selected The Spirit Lives. And one of the most awesome things, it came to mind, what if we were to get an artist to write a song called The Spirit Lives? And Steve Helms, a local red dirt artist, stepped up to the plate and wrote a beautiful song. And then we went ahead and went over to where the future home of the National Medal of Honor Museum, and put out a second display of flags and entitled it "Be the Hope." And an artist out of New Braunfels, Austin, New Braunfels area, Creed Fisher, stepped up to the plate and wrote the song "Be the Hope." I believe that in the next few days, we'll be releasing those songs with their music videos. And I can tell you that they're very moving. We have great videographers, and they're younger. Their vision is going to really make everybody feel good inside when you see what these videographers have put together with these artists' songs.
That's a great example of how the collaboration happens here. You start with one little seed of an idea, and people find ways to make their contributions and coming together, and then it turns something that was just a small idea into something so impactful. And the generosity too, because it happened overnight, and none of it would have happened if people weren't willing to donate their time and waive the costs and come out and work together. And you see that over and over again in our arts community, in our downtown, and in our city too.
One thing I'd like to bring up and go back to with the Levitt, because our first large artist, when we had B.J. Thomas play at the Levitt Pavilion, one of the other pieces of art that we actually had on stage, and we've never done it again to my knowledge, but we had the painter, Ro Diaz, actually painted a painting on the stage while B.J. Thomas performed. And Ro is very well known. He is the artist that painted the Pegasus that you see on everybody's wall, with the white horse with the red on the mobile looking sign over that generated in Dallas, I believe. So anyway, that was another side of art that we had way back then when the Levitt opened, and that was really awesome.
I remember that day. That was pretty amazing. There's been mentors that everybody has had through all of this. Letatia, I know Pat is going to be a lifetime mentor for you. For me in Arlington, Johnny High was a mentor. Jane Alexander has always been a mentor. Paul has always been a mentor. But can you guys talk about who your mentors were?
Well, my mother was probably my biggest mentor. But again, Jane Ellis, Dean Corey, the people, in the schools, because they were so instrumental in, getting us out. And we didn't have sports when I was in school for women. So it was a little bit different. The arts were kind of what you had. So
I guess I would have to say always my mom. My mom, she was a part of Women's Club in Arlington. And when I spoke with the group a few months ago, I said, did you guys have an event called Kaleidoscope? I said, because as a young girl, I remember my mother on the dance stage or getting dressed up, and I'm going as a little kid going, are you wearing that? And they did a dance, and she was a part of their committee that did art and dance. And then, probably another mentor would be Lori Licious. She's the general manager of the Parks Mall. I was there for years, and her ability to think larger than just a retail mall. And so through the years when I was there, we put on some amazing concerts, Brown Bag Series, FFH, Phillips, Craig and Dean, to NSYNC. So, I mean, it's just, she's just been a leader. Those are just two strong, and the list goes on. I mean, my grandmother, I mean, everybody. Yeah, women, men, there's just anybody that you connect with that you can collaborate and share ideas, become a mentor in some way.
Paul, do you have anything to add before we wrap up?
Wow. You know, I think that one of the people that I'd like to bring up that we haven't mentioned yet is Randy Ford and Jay Gilligan's. And, you know, Jay Gilligan's has been huge in the live music downtown. And we have to be, I'm very thankful for Randy and what he does for the community. But one of the things that I had recently discovered was that where City Hall currently sits, across from the Levitt, there used to be a live music venue there called the Mine Shaft that Randy Ford owned.
I haven't heard about the Mine Shaft.
Oh, yeah.
The Mine Shaft, Randy actually brought in a gentleman by the name of Larry Heath, had a band called the Calico Trio.
Yes.
And guys turned around and added a fourth member and really became pretty huge. They ended up opening for the Eagles in the early 70s, which is pretty awesome. So, you know, Randy's been around and had some great artists start there. I believe Casey Donahue started there at Jay Gilligan's, and he's a huge Red Dirt music artist. You know, now that all of the stuff has started to grow and the collaborations and everything, you know, we've recently brought the Texas Regional Radio Music Awards to Arlington, and that is huge. We had to postpone those this year. They should have been in March, but it looks like, and we're hoping and praying, keeping our fingers crossed, that August 2nd and August 3rd, we will be able to hold the music awards again. And that will take place at the Music Hall and at Texas Live. In the first year that we brought it, we actually held our Future Faces event on the Levitt stage. And so they've even been instrumental in helping keep those or get those here and keeping them moving forward.
Well, we're super excited to look forward to what the arts are going to bring in the future. We know that everyone is patiently waiting and looking forward to what's next as we all figure out how to come together and bring people back together safely. But it's awesome to hear the stories and to learn more about why live music and the arts are so vibrant here in Arlington. And thanks to each of you for joining us and sharing your stories today. And to close our session, here's a few parting words from our mayor, Jeff Williams.
It is a great day in Arlington.
Thanks so much for listening, and please join us next week on Facebook Live at 4 o'clock on Thursday. We're going to be talking about the history of downtown Arlington's revitalization. Our guests include Tom Cravens, Mary Tom Kernott, and Tony Ritigliano.